Great Lakes Church Online. I'm so glad that you have decided to join us today. We are live in the lobby, so this is a totally new experience, and usually it's Carson behind this camera, but this week he's in Seattle with Dave, so we'll just go ahead and pray for him right now, and we're going to hang out this morning, and so really excited just to be hanging out with you guys. If we haven't met before, my name is Britt, and I am on staff here at Great Lakes Church, and I serve in two roles, okay? So I serve as our high school director. I also serve as our groups coordinator, and so whichever realm we see each other in, I just want to say I am so honored to serve this community. I'm going to reload my computer so that way you and we can interact during our time together. We've got 10 minutes that we're going to spend together. Good morning, Patty. Good morning, Liam. Good morning, Carson. Good morning, Michelle. I'm so glad that you decided to come hang out with us today. So we just wrapped up the series called I Love My Church, and one of the most encouraging parts about this series is that I got to talk to people all week about why they love Great Lakes Church, okay? So what I want you to do is in the chat section, I want you to tell me, why do you love Great Lakes Church? All right, so that's the first thing, but I'll tell you why I love Great Lakes Church. I came here a year ago, and when I came here, I was just really engulfed in this idea that we would build bridges and not walls. And this was a little messy at first. This didn't go over smooth. I came from just a very religious heart posture. And so learning to break down those walls was new to me. And the reason I say that is because wherever you're watching from today, here's what I want you to know is we just want to be a place that's for the community. And we'll kind of segue into what does that look like and what does that feel like. But today, here's what I want you to know. Whatever made you click on this screen, however you got here, I just want you to know we're really glad that you're here. It's our heart that we would build bridges, not walls. So whatever you're clicking in with, we just want to say we love you, and this is a place for you. All right, I got to reload again. My computer keeps catching up on the comments, and so I want to make sure that we stay up to date. Michelle says, people loving people. That's why she loves our church. Patty says, good morning, Michelle. Michelle says, hey, Patty. Carson says, what has been the highlight of your week? Okay, do you want the honest truth? I thought about this morning. The highlight of my week. So we launched groups this last week, and Monday was great. I got to gather with so many women, but Thursday night, we launched high school groups for the very first time, okay? So this hasn't been done at Great Lakes Church, and straight up, I was so nervous. I'm like, oh boy, are these gonna go? And if they go, are they gonna be successful? And if they're not successful, what do I do? And I was so nervous going into Thursday, but I left really encouraged, actually, and I left with new wisdom when it comes to leaving students. So here's what I want to tell you, parents, all right? So I left with this tidbit, and I was like, I never thought of that before. When you're a student, when you're a child, you're expected to trust adults. Never once, even as an adult, have I asked a kid, hey, what do I do to build your trust? And then when you're a student, it's almost like you have to earn the trust of adults. And they brought up this idea that why is trust a one-way street? Why are students and kids not asked, hey, as an adult, what do I have to do to build your trust? And this was just such an eye-opening thing for me. And so the highlight of my week were those conversations. The highlight of my week was watching those kids just have those conversations and be deep in conversation and who God is and how he's moving in their lives. So that was definitely, personally, that was the highlight of my week. All right, so before we go any further, I want to tell you how you can get connected to Great Lakes Church, all right? So every week we tell you guys we are so excited to connect with you. And so the way you can do that, you can go to greatlakechurch.com/cc, and you'll be able to fill out a Connect card. And on that Connect card, we're just going to ask for your name, phone number, email. We just really want to connect with you, okay? And so that's one way. The other way that we can connect with you is last week in the series, I Love My Church, we kind of gave a push to get involved. And then today we start a new series called For, right? And so this series is going to be talking about how we are for our community, how we're for our church, how we're for the people around us. And so one way you can get connected here is by getting plugged in. Now, this could be on a servant team. This could be in a group. This could be by just saying, hey, I want to be known at Great Lakes Church, and so I want to invite you to fill out that survey. You can find the connection card and the survey at greatlakechurch.com and look our heart really is just that we would connect with you. All right, so let me reload the comments. Let's see what's going on. Sue Rizzo said, it's a great place to grow spiritually wherever you are at in the journey. I love that, Sue. It's so true, right? Because I think we're all just working in progress. We're all taking steps. And so Great Lakes Church isn't really a place about perfection. It's a place about progress. Can you take steps forward to do and be who God has called you to be? So I know we talked about groups a little bit earlier, but I want to hit on this one more time as we just kind of spend this last little bit together and tell you the impact that groups has had on my life. So I moved back here about a year ago, and when I moved here, I didn't know anybody. I had no idea anyone at Great Lakes Church, and so I joined my first group called Just Dance. Now, this is like a low, if you have like social anxiety and you don't really like people, I would say our activity groups are a great way to go. Here's why. You don't have to connect with people forever. You can show up, you can meet them once or twice, and then you can leave and get out of Dodge. And that's exactly what I did. So I went to the Just Dance group 2 times, and I met a few people at Great Lakes Church, which made coming through those doors not so scary. You know, anytime we can see someone's face and know them, we're like, okay, deep breath, it's going to be okay. So that Just Dance group really is the thing that got me plugged in here at Great Lakes Church. And so the reason I say that is if you're watching this today and you're a little bit nervous about joining a group, here's what I want you to know is we've got groups for all types of people. So if you're looking to serve one time, we got that. If you're looking to do a one-time group, we've got that. But if you're looking to grow in your faith, we've got that too. And so don't let the fear of what you think a group might look like hold you back from joining a group. I just want to encourage you to take that first step to just, it takes 10 seconds of insane courage, and I promise something great will come of it, okay? So just take that first step, do that first thing that you know to do, and get plugged in here. All right, reloading, guys. I got to stay reloading. I got to see what's coming through. If anything's coming through, let me know how your day is going. That's what I want to know. Carson is just loving it. You're right, Carson. We're going to send them a water bottle from Great Lakes Church, okay? So if it is your first time and you fill out that connection card online, we've got a blue Great Lakes Church water bottle that we'll send you. I'm not saying that it's like the most holy water bottle ever, but I'm saying it's pretty close, okay? It's probably the best water bottle you're going to get in your whole life because it's a Great Lakes Church water bottle. So if it is your first time, make sure you mark that on the connection card so that way we can connect with you. Dale said, hey, Britt. And I said, hey, Dale. All right. I'm trying to think what else. Summertime. Oh, that's a survey. Not summer, guys. Summer is past. So I hope this cold weather isn't too bad for you guys. We dropped quick. I don't know about you guys, but I put a flannel on this morning. I had to warm up a little bit. It's 40 degrees out. It feels like almost overnight we lost summer and we're into fall. So I hope that you're enjoying it, whether you like fall, whether you really loved summer, wherever you're at on that. Carson said, Britt, drop some love for the people at Facebook.com. Oh, I'm learning so much this morning, you guys. Facebook community, we just want to say good morning. We love you. We're so glad that you joined us today. And look, if this is your first time joining us, I just want to, again, point you over to greatlakechurch.com. Last week, we finished up the I Love My Church series, and with that we said, hey guys, link arms with us. Don't just be somebody that shows up every Sunday, but link arms with us and help us build something great. Help us get involved in the community. So if you visit greatlakechurch.com, there's a survey that's waiting for you, and on that survey there's so many options of what you can get involved in, whether that's a group, whether that's a serving opportunity, whatever it is. We want you to know that we want you here, and we love you, and we're for you. Speaking of we're for you, we're getting ready to kick over to a new series called 4. All right, and so we've got one worship song for you guys this morning before the talk kicks off, and I just want to say thank you again for hanging out. We're so glad to have you here. We're so glad to engage with you online. You guys have been awesome. I have learned so much this morning, so I just want to say thank you for letting me spend some time with you. And yeah, I'm really excited. I think it's going to be a great talk. I'm getting cues from the camera. The song is after. The song is after the talk. It is not next. See, that's what cameramen are for. You don't see so much that's happening here, but there's somebody also telling me what to do. So talk, then song. Look, thanks so much for hanging out with us today, guys. See you back here soon.
Hello? Are you ready to go? Oh, man, I don't know about that. Guys, if you're joining us in Kenosha today, I want to say hello to you. Racine, we say hello to you. Those of you who watch online week after week faithfully, that's a growing community. Not everybody watches simultaneously. There's a lot of people who watch on demand during the week, but regardless of how you watch, we want to welcome you. And, of course, those in the room with me. I'm just going to tell you, my energy today is going to outpass your excitement. All right, I am passionate. We are jumping into a new series. If you are just brand new here or you've been gone for a couple weeks, we did finish up our series called I Love My Church. You can go to greatlakechurch.com, click on Talks, and you can catch up. And the reason it's important to catch up is the series we just did talks about who we are and why we exist and what we believe and a little bit of where we're headed. But today, we are launching a brand new series called For. And it is a follow-up series to the one we just did, which is why it's so important you go back and watch it if you did not watch it. But instead of talking about who we are and why we exist and what we believe in this series, what we're going to talk about is how to live out our beliefs. Because if we're going to make a difference, we are going to have to learn to live out and act out what we say we believe. And so the premise of this series is that every single individual in every single organization, in every single product, in every single church is going to be known by something. They're going to be known for something. You can't avoid it. Everybody and everything has a reputation, all right? So Henry Ford, what did he have a reputation for? Yeah, cars, mass-producing vehicles. That's what he was known for. Elvis Presley, what is he known for? Yeah, music, rock and roll. He's also known for theft because he stole the hearts of young women all across the world, right? How about the Ritz-Carlton? What is the Ritz-Carlton known for? Luxury hotels, amazing, off-the-charts customer service. If you've ever heard some of the stories of their customer service, it is just mind-boggling. That's what they're known for, all right? How about Frontier Airlines? What are they known for? Cheap tickets and horrible customer service. Right, so they're exact opposite of Ritz-Carlton. They're not paying a lot. You're not paying a lot of money, and you're not getting good customer service. That's what it is. How about Amazon? What are they known for? Creating addicts. Right, shopping addicts, just like Costco and Target. I wasn't planning on buying that. How did I end up with $182 of stuff in my cart? But everybody and everything has a reputation. Microsoft, Tesla, Miley Cyrus, Donald Trump, Joe Biden, McDonald's. The list goes on and on and on and on. Everybody and everything. And so there are going to be two questions I want you to consider throughout this series. Here's the first question. What do you want to be known for? What do you want to be known for? What is the dent you want to make on this world? What is the reputation you want attached to who you are? What is the mark that you want to leave? When people are talking about your life and you're laying in a casket, right, or your ashes are sitting there, what are people going to say about you? What do you want to be known for? Here's the second question. What are you known for? Now, unfortunately for all of us, we don't get to answer the second question. I don't get to answer it, right? I can tell you what I want to be known for, but you know who gets to answer the second question? My wife, my kids, my family, my friends, my acquaintances, people who've met me 2 or 3 times, right, and interacted with me. And the fun thing is when the answer to both of these questions match up, when they align, when they sync up, we're living a very purpose-filled life. Right? We're living a life of meaning and significance. It's a very fulfilling place to be. But for most of us, if we're honest, the answer to the question, what do you want to be known for and what are you known for, has a little gap. Right? For some of us, it's a little gap. For others, it's a really big gap. But regardless of how big that gap is, when the answer to those two questions do not match up, there should be a restlessness inside of us because it means we are not living life to our fullest potential. So what do you want to be known for and what are you known for? And I got to tell you that when it comes to that first question, what do you want to be known for? I'm actually hoping you haven't thought about that for a while. I really am. I'm hoping you haven't given it much thought because I want to spend the next several weeks convincing you of what you ought to be known for. And if I can convince you to be known for something and at least most of the people around you to be known for the same thing, then what happens is collectively as a church, as we link arms, we begin to develop a reputation. Several months ago, I gave a talk at this church about the different types of churches that exist in a community. And for a few minutes, what I want to do is I want to review a little bit of that talk. And the reason why is because in southeast Wisconsin and in northern Illinois, there are a couple hundred churches in existence, right? And of course, when I say church, I'm not talking about a building. I'm talking about a faith community. I'm talking about the people, but a lot of those faith communities do have buildings. And so every church and every faith community is going to be unique. This was a little bit of our last series. Those with buildings, they're located in different neighborhoods, right? Every church has a unique makeup and a unique personality and a unique focus. And yet every one of those churches could fit into one of four categories. The first category of churches are churches that exist in the community, right? These are churches that simply exist. They have an address, they have a phone number, some of them have a facility, they hold weekly services, but when you peel back all the layers, they're making very, very little difference on the community. And as much as we want to be a cheerleader for every church, and as much as we want to talk positive about every church, the fact is that churches that simply exist in the community could close their doors at any moment and almost nobody would notice. And every single year in our country, there are somewhere between 6,000 and 10,000 churches that close their doors. And what's really concerning is the Barna Group, which is a very reputable organization. They just came out with a study, and they are predicting that because of COVID-19 and all the implications, that in the next 18 months, 1 out of every 5 churches are going to close their doors. The fascinating thing is there's never a church that starts out and says, we want to be a church that just holds services and we exist for religious people and for, taking up people's time on Sunday mornings or Wednesday nights. Nobody starts like that. But what happens is over time, we become complacent and comfortable and indifferent to the needs of the community. And I got to tell you, as our church has gotten older, I have to constantly fight that gravitational pull. In fact, John, who was one of the 12 disciples of Jesus, he writes a letter to different churches, and that letter is called Revelation. And in his letter, he references a church located in Laodicea, which is part of modern-day Turkey. And it was a church that over time had gone from being on mission to becoming lukewarm and apathetic. And the message that God has for them that he writes out in this letter is this. He says, be diligent and turn from your indifference. Like, get back on mission. Don't be a church that simply exists in the community. A second category of church that exists in every community are churches that are against the community. Now, thankfully, there's not a lot of churches like this in southeast Wisconsin and in northern Illinois. But there are some. These are churches that constantly position themselves, us against them, right? And everybody inside our little club is right and everybody out there is wrong and they need to have the answer like we have the answer. And if they just listen to us, man, woo, things would be much better. And of course, that kind of thinking isolates churches from the culture and from the people in the community that they should be there for. And I've seen this unfold in very odd ways with COVID-19. Great churches, good churches who started to act like and started to, with their social media posts and with different interviews, almost act like victims with COVID-19. Because of different state regulations or local regulations, these great churches were saying things like, well, nobody's going to tell the church what to do. Our mandate is from God and not from the community, which I get that kind of thinking and I understand it. But if you're not careful, that will position you as us against them, which is why we have done our best to just follow mandates. We've done our best to encourage people as whether you agree with something or don't agree with something. If they tell us we can't meet with over this many people, we're gonna listen to them. And we just don't want to position ourselves as us against them, right? Then there are churches of the community. These are great churches, but they have an identity crisis. It's like they want to be everything to everybody. And again, I get this. I think anybody who's a follower of Jesus gets this, where you just don't want to be so odd. You just don't want to be so different from everybody else. Everybody's like, not hanging out with them, right? And so as a church, we have to fight this gravitational pull to just be a reflection of our culture and our community. I was actually a part of a church at one point, thousands of people attending, and then over time, they started becoming more and more and more of a reflection of the community. And today, it's just a couple hundred people left in the church. When you start to blend in and you start to just camouflage yourself with the community around you, the question is, why even exist? Like, why even gather together? You're just like everybody else. So we want to resist that. And then the fourth kind of church is churches that are for the community, right? These are churches that look for ways to prove that they are followers of Jesus by the way they love and serve the community. And so collectively as a church, if we were asked the question, what kind of church do you want to be? What do you want to be known for? The answer to that question is this. We want to be known as a church that's for our communities. For Kenosha, for Racine, for Pleasant Prairie, for communities in northern Illinois, for communities that are a little bit west, including Union Grove. We want to be known as churches that are for our community, as a church that's for our communities. And in my lifetime, I've never seen a better moment than right now for the church to step up and make it known we are for our community. Now, I referenced this recently in a talk, but I felt like based on the context of where we're going in this series, I need to reference it again, and so I'll do it quickly. But 2,500 years ago, the Jewish people were at a very low point in their history. The city of Jerusalem had been destroyed. The temple had been torn down. Homes had been burned to the ground. Best and the brightest of the Jewish citizens were marched off 500 miles away to another city. Right now, they're living in exile, and they lived there for several decades. And it's during that time that a Jewish prophet by the name of Jeremiah just gets depressed, and he's heartbroken, and he sits down and he's reflecting on things that are happening. And God speaks very specifically to the Jew. I just spit a whole bunch up here. If you need a drink of water, come collect this afterwards. But God speaks very specifically to Jeremiah, and he says, hey, I know the Jewish people are heartbroken. They've been living in exile for a while now. Tell them, don't give up hope. Tell them to get jobs. Tell them to start businesses. Tell them to marry the citizens of the city where you're located. And then God says this, he says, tell them to work for the peace and prosperity of the city where I sent you into exile. Pray to the Lord for it, for its welfare will determine your welfare. When our communities and our cities prosper, we prosper. When our communities move ahead, we move ahead. And that's why we are for our communities. That's why we do our best to be a blessing to Kenosha and Racine. That's why we work so hard at this. It's why over the past month, every single Wednesday, we set aside an hour and we created space and we said, hey, if you've got 5 minutes or 15 minutes and you could come and you can just sit and reflect and pray for the city of Kenosha, we want to invite you to do that. We want to be for our communities. It's why when you look at the history of our church, we've constantly gotten involved and partnered with local organizations. Agape House, an organization that used to be just for young women, but now they're for young men, and they're helping them in critical seasons of life. It's why we started a camp for kids in foster care. It's why we have a mentorship for kids who are in foster care. It's why we partner with Sleep in Heavenly Peace, which builds beds for kids in our area who do not have beds. It's why in Racine County, we partner with Bray Center, that is a youth and family development center. It's why recently we started partnering with One Hope, which is a newer organization that brings people together. It's why this spring we found out about an organization in Racine called Kingdom Builders, and we decided to partner with them. In fact, just as COVID-19 was really taking place and we weren't meeting anymore, Pastor Rex became more and more he started really digging into some of the things in Racine and some of the organizations that were helping people. And he said, man, this is an organization we got to look into and partner with. And so he sat down back in the spring with one of the leaders of Kingdom Builders and interviewed them. Well, we chopped that interview up to get it down to 5 minutes. I want you to hear a little bit about what that organization does.
Well, hello, everyone. My name is Rex, if we've never met before, and I serve as a campus pastor for our Racine campus here at Great Lakes Church. And joining me today in this little interview is a new friend of mine, Pastor Deborah, who is part of Kingdom Builders and an outreach center here in Racine. And she and her husband, Pastor Leon, lead a phenomenal ministry. So we recently partnered with Kingdom Builders financially, but wanted to talk to Deborah here and just really get to know the heart of Kingdom Builders a little more and share that with you. So welcome, Deborah. Tell us a little bit about the church and how long you guys have been doing this here in Racine.
Well, Kingdom Builders Fellowship Center and Outreach Ministry is Pastor Leon is a senior pastor, and I co-pastor with him. And our church is non-denominational, so we are also called Beyond the Walls. That meaning that we're commissioned to love, reach, teach, and build men and women, boys and girls through the gospel of Jesus Christ.
That's awesome. And certainly when I was there, it was very evident that you guys are outside of the four walls of your church. It is a large operation. It's a large warehouse with walk-in freezers and fridges and pallets of food everywhere. And guys, those of you who are watching, we're not talking about boxes in the corner somewhere of macaroni and cheese. We're talking fresh produce, milk, products for hair and soap, hygiene, fresh meat. On your Facebook page a few weeks ago, someone had received, I think it was some milk or whatever that had been bad. Told them this, you said, you're worth the best and not just anything. And our purpose is to serve you in a dignified and respectful manner. And I just absolutely love that. And I wanted to ask you, where does this desire to serve with such excellence come from?
First and most importantly, when you're called to serve people, it requires the right kind of heart. And that is a heart of compassion. Mm-hmm. That keeps you from serving with a prejudiced, judgmental, or a reserved agenda. And for those who receive our service, their hearts melt because of the measure of care and value shown to them and their families' needs. Life has a way of driving all sorts of people into that food distribution line. But the way we serve them speaks directly to them, that they matter and that there's hope and someone cares.
Do you guys rely a lot on volunteers, or is it a bunch of paid staff? How do you guys make it all happen during the week?
There are absolutely no paid staff. Everything is 100% volunteers. Okay. We have over 40 volunteers. And most of our volunteers actually, they were birthed through the need. They came from the line. And because of their need in their lives, they came with that compassion. They came with that readiness to serve as they were served. And so our volunteers, the majority of them are members, and a lot of them are non-members, but they are followers, and they're connected at the heart. We couldn't do it without them.
Okay, that's good. Neither could Great Lakes Church, so I'm with you on that. Last question. How would, for those who are watching and maybe are not familiar with it, maybe they themselves are finding themselves in need right now of food, with work hours being cut back or being furloughed on jobs because of the crisis we're in, or maybe they know somebody, a neighbor or a friend, how would one sign up to receive food from Kingdom Builders?
One of two ways. One, they can go to our website, which is www.kingdombuildersracine.org, and they can page down to where it says food. Oh, gee, I don't know what it's food. So they can see that. And then they can also follow us on Facebook, Kingdom Builders Fellowship Center and Outreach Center in Racine. We're the only Kingdom Builders in Racine. And so that's where they can go and find us on our website or on Facebook, and we'll be glad to help.
We just wish you guys the absolute best and can't wait to partner with you guys even further.
Amen. And we thank you from the bottom of our hearts. On behalf of Pastor Leon and myself and the entire Kingdom Builders family, we say thank you to Great Lakes. Thank you, Pastor Rex. Thank you for allowing God to touch your heart to connect with us. And we're looking forward to a greater partnership and relationship with you.
Awesome. Well, have a great day, Deborah, and we will talk to you soon.
Isn't that awesome? And so earlier this year, we partnered with them financially. As opportunities become available in the future, we'll partner with them in volunteer time. By the way, when Pastor Deborah spoke, I thought, man, that girl needs to come speak at Great Lakes Church someday. So who knows, man? Woo! She got me fired up. But let me tell you, when we talk about a church that's for our communities, let's just talk very candidly about what it means to be for someone. To be for someone, just to be clear, means you want the best for them, you sacrifice for them, you hope to see them succeed, you don't get jealous because you're wanting to help them succeed, right? You encourage them and you stand alongside them. That's what it means to be for someone. Now, on the flip side, to not be for someone, to be actually against them, means this. You don't want the best for them. You don't sacrifice for them. You don't hope to see them succeed. You don't encourage them. You don't stand alongside them in any way. As a matter of fact, you belittle them. You debate them. You show them how wrong they are. You find ways to tear them apart. You find ways to make people question their reputation. We don't want to be like that. We want to be a church that is known for our communities. And the only way we're going to be known as a church for our communities is if you as an individual and me as an individual says, I'm going to be for people. Ultimately, that's how we make a difference. And so what I want to do with the rest of the time we have together, and I'm going to try to get through this as quickly as possible, I want to give you 4 ways that Jesus and early church leaders made a difference. How they made it obvious that we are for people. The first is this: they leaned relationally in the direction of those they disagreed with. In other words, they constantly built bridges with people who they wanted to influence. And a great example of this is the Apostle Paul. One day, Paul is walking around the city of Athens, Greece, and he's noticing as he walks around that there are idols, there are gods, there are goddesses. It is a very religious city. Now think about the context here. Paul is a devout Jew. Ever since he was a child, he was taught the Hebrew scriptures. He was taught to respect them and live them out and obey them. And one of the most dominant laws in all of the Hebrew scriptures is this law: do not have idols. Do not create a god or a goddess. Do not kind of capture this image of what you think God's like and put it into some sort of physical character representation. And so the Apostle Paul is walking around this city, and it is filled with idols, and it's filled with gods and goddesses. And so what do you think would have been the easiest message he could have preached that day? Get rid of your idols. The judgment of God's on you. If you don't eliminate these idols, you're going to be cursed with diarrhea for the next 2 years. He could have got so passionate, but he would have made no difference. And because he wanted to make a difference, he does something brilliant. What he does is he actually finds an altar with an inscription on it. It doesn't have any image. It just has an inscription. The inscription says, "To the unknown God." This is fascinating to me. In the 1800s, archaeologists actually found an altar that actually says, "To the unknown God." You can visit the museum with this altar today. It's just fascinating to me. But Paul finds this altar. And the reason the Athenians had an altar that said "To the unknown God" is they had all these gods and goddesses, but they were afraid, well, what if we miss one? Well, what if a God shows up and we weren't ready? We want to say, hey, we didn't know who you were, what you were like, but we have an altar ready for you. And eventually, after walking around the city and seeing all this, Paul finds himself standing in front of some of the most respected and educated men of the city. They were known as the council. And he's standing in a location known as Mars Hill. Now, I love this because you can visit Mars Hill to this very day. It's actually a location that still exists. And as he's standing there on Mars Hill before this council, here's what we read. So Paul, standing before the council, addressed them as follows: "Men of Athens, I notice that you are very religious in every way. For as I was walking along, I saw your many shrines. And one of your altars had this inscription on it: 'To an unknown God.' This God, whom you worship without knowing, is the one I'm telling you about. He is the God who made the world and everything in it. Since he is the Lord of heaven and earth, he doesn't live in man-made temples, and human hands can't serve his needs, for he has no needs. He himself gives life and breath to everything, and he satisfies every need." Notice, Paul does not preach against something. He preaches for something. And at the end of his message, there were a lot of people that thought what Paul was saying was nonsense, but we read that there were a handful of people who thought what he was saying made a little bit of sense to them, and they said, "We want to come back tomorrow and hear more." Now, I don't want you to miss this. This is so huge. But if we got Jesus, and we got the Apostle Paul, and we had the religious Jews, the religious leaders known as the Pharisees, up on stage, and we did a theological quiz, every one of them would pass the test. They all agreed. They'd all say, "We believe that there's one God, and he's the creator of all things. We believe in the ethics and the morals as taught by the Hebrew scriptures. We all believe that you should take care of the poor. We're all in agreement that Bon Jovi is the patron saint of glam rock." Like, we agree on these things, right? But they were constantly butting heads over their approach. Constantly. And so here we are 2,000 years later, and we talk about the difference Jesus made and the difference the Apostle Paul made. And what do we do when it comes about to the Pharisees and the religious leaders? All we do is talk about how divisive they were. All we do is say we don't want to be like them, because they didn't know how to build relationships. Theologically, they knew all the right things, but practically did not know how to live them out. And what's interesting is we don't live 2,000 years ago. We live in 2020. And where our divisions come right now is politics. And we have Republicans who are absolutely convinced if Jesus lived today that Jesus would be a Republican because of his values. And we have Democrats who say Jesus would absolutely be a Democrat because of his care and concern for people. And we all think Jesus is going to be on our side. But what's interesting is when you study the life of Jesus, people who were nothing like Jesus actually liked Jesus because he leaned relationally in their direction, which is why he was able to make a difference. Now, another reason that Jesus and early church leaders were able to make a difference is they were not afraid of guilt by association. Right? There's something about people who are followers of Jesus and people who are religious that we care about what people think, right? Where we're just the fear perception. You don't see this with Jesus. Matter of fact, the reputation Jesus had is he was friend of sinners. That's who Jesus was. He was a friend of sinners. People would be like, Jesus, I noticed that you like to hang out and you like to do dinners with people who lied. Does that mean you think lying is okay? Jesus, I noticed you hang out and you're with people who they cheat. They cheat on their taxes. Are you saying cheating's okay, Jesus? Hey, Jesus, yesterday I saw you at a restaurant. Guy you were with had a Detroit Lions jersey. Jesus, what's going on here? And Jesus would say, stop jumping to conclusions. Stop writing your own narrative. I'm just here to connect with people. Well, you sit in the comfort of your home surrounded by people who think the way you think and vote the way you vote and believe the way you believe. I'm just trying to make connections with people because everybody has a story of brokenness. And I'm just here to help heal the wounds that people have. He was not afraid of guilt by association. Jesus would absolutely hang out with the leaders of the Black Lives Matter movement. And he would hang out with police chiefs and police officers. Jesus would hang out with Republicans and he would hang out with Democrats. I'm not so certain about libertarians, but he would hang out with Republicans and Democrats. He would hang out with people who wore a mask everywhere they went. And he would hang out with people who were anti-maskers. People thought the whole thing was a hoax. But for some reason, it's just almost impossible for us to do this. In fact, Peter, who was one of the more famous disciples of Jesus, a very close friend of Jesus, he struggled with this. He would get around one certain people and he'd act a certain way. Then he'd get around another group of people with different beliefs and he'd act another way. And he didn't want either group to really know what was going on. And finally, the Apostle Paul confronted him on it. He's like, dude, I've had enough. And Paul writes about this in one of his letters. We don't have time to read the whole interaction, but here's what he says. He says, but when Peter came to Antioch, I had to oppose him to his face for what he did was very wrong. He said, I had to call out Peter because of his fear of how he was going to be perceived by people. And I got to tell you, of the different struggles that I have in my life, this is one of my biggest struggles. I feel like I'm always walking a line. A lot of it's just because of the culture in which we live, right? I was out of town when the unrest in Kenosha unfolded. And the different riots were taking place. And then at the end of all of that, I was getting back from vacation, and I found out that there was a gathering for the family of Jacob Blake at Civic Park in Kenosha. And so my family and I, we just went to the park because I wanted to be there for a family that I knew was deeply grieving. But I stayed in the way back because I was afraid there might be people there from the Kenosha News. And I didn't want to be interviewed, and I didn't want my picture taken because I know someone from our church is going to open that up and say, oh, what? Is Dave against police officers? Is Dave making a statement here against law enforcement? But I wanted to be there for a family that I knew was deeply grieving. At the same time, I have lots of friends who are black and brown and people of color and people I'm building relationships with. And I'm telling you, there'd be tension in me if they walked in and they saw me having breakfast with 3 or 4 police officers. And I want to be clear, I deeply respect police officers and I feel very highly about our law enforcement. But there'd still be this tension inside of me. What are they thinking? Are they thinking now that I don't believe that black lives actually do matter? Are they thinking I'm making a statement of some sort? But Jesus and early church leaders, they were able to make a difference because they just weren't afraid of guilt by association. Another reason that Jesus and early church leaders were able to make a difference is because they didn't judge non-Christians for behaving like non-Christians. Right? They didn't expect people who didn't follow Jesus to behave like they did. Jesus never pretended to be like Chris Hansen from Dateline NBC, right? He never walked in on people doing something they shouldn't be doing and surprised them and said, hey, I'm here to shame you. In front of the world, our cameras are here. And yet, followers of Jesus can be notorious for this. We expect people who don't claim to follow Jesus to behave like they do. The crazy thing is, people who claim to follow Jesus don't even behave like followers of Jesus should. And so Paul writes this letter in the first century, and here's what he writes. He says, it isn't my responsibility to judge outsiders. It isn't my responsibility to judge those outside the faith community, but it certainly is your responsibility. He's writing to a church. It certainly is your responsibility to judge those inside the church who are sinning. So The Apostle Paul doesn't walk around the city of Athens saying, shame on you, I can't believe you're worshiping idols. In order to make a difference, he understood relationships had to be built. And when there's relationship, then you can talk about morals and values, and you're doing it out of love, and you're doing it out of friendship. You're not doing it out of this position of superiority and judgment and shame. That's why in the most famous talk Jesus ever gave, he said to his followers, he says, you are the salt of the earth. Let's be honest, salt makes things taste better. You got a hamburger, you got a steak, you got corn, I don't care what it is, you put salt on it, man, it just went from good to great. Jesus says, you are the salt of the earth. You know another thing salt does? It preserves. And Jesus says to his followers, you are the preservers of culture. Without you, things seem to start to go south very, very quickly. And it seems like almost this arrogant statement. But Jesus is talking to a group of people who, if you think about this in context, they believe that the strongest and most powerful people always should win. Women had no rights. Children had no rights. Mercy and compassion and generosity were not even considered virtues. Those were things considered for the weak. And the only way we can ever imagine a world like that is to visit countries in our world today that still operate that way. Jesus says, you're the salt, you preserve. You make things better. And then he goes on, he says, you are the light of the world, like a city on a hilltop that cannot be hidden. The implication is our world is dark. It's in trouble. It's wandering around in darkness, and you bring hope. He says, no one lights a lamp and then puts it under a basket. Some translations say, or under a bushel. Instead, a lamp is placed on a stand where it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your good deeds shine out for all to see so that everyone will praise your heavenly Father. You are the light of the world. When I was a kid and I would go to Sunday school, we had this song where we just hold up our finger. It's like, this little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine. Anybody else sing this? Right? We could sing it together, right? We're not going to. But we get to that point where this little light of mine, and I'm going to let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. And then it got really intense. Don't let Satan blow it out. Or those of us who are a little bit more dramatic, right? Don't let Satan it out. I'm going to let it shine. There was COVID just threw out 3 feet past me, right? Don't let Satan blow it out. I'm going to let it. It was very, very spiritual. Do you want to know, or do you want to be a light that attracts people? Then live your life in such a way that the way you treat people and the way you do marriage and the way you manage resources and the way you love and the way you foster and the way you adopt and the way you serve blows people away. We can make a point by throwing hand grenades into our culture, or we can make a difference by opening our arms and loving and serving and being gentle with our words. This is why Paul teaches, let your conversation be always full of grace, seasoned with salt, so that you may know how to answer everyone. We are salt, we are light. Our conversations need to be full of grace. Let me give you an example of what that looks like. You don't have to agree with the school district on everything. You don't have to like everything the school district does. But let your conversations about our school district and those in leadership be full of grace. You don't have to agree with everything every teacher does. If you have a problem because teachers called in more than you would have assumed would call in on a specific day, you can be in disagreement with that. Let your conversations be full of grace. You don't have to agree with everything the mayor of Kenosha, the mayor of Racine does. You don't have to agree with everything you see in the debates. Let your conversations be full of grace. That's how we make a difference. That's how we make a difference. That's how we make a difference. Number 4, here we go. How did Jesus and early church leaders make a difference? They refused to be drawn into non-productive debates and discussion. Every day, man, we're going to have these opportunities. We're going to read something that's going to fire us up. People's going to say, please tell me your great opinion because you are the master of everything. Just tell me, what do you think? And we're going to be like, oh, I want to share so much right now. But if we want to make a difference, we need to be careful. And you need to hear this, and I need to hear this. There are some questions we should never answer based on who's asking it, when they're asking it, where they're asking it, and why they're asking it. Not every question deserves to be answered. There were several instances where Jesus himself did not respond to questions. Here's one occasion. When Jesus returned to the temple and began teaching, the leading priests and elders came up to him. They demanded, by what authority are you doing these things? Who gave you the right? In other words, you're here teaching. Who gave you the right to teach? And Jesus said, well, let me ask you a few questions. And they discussed among themselves. They couldn't come up with an answer. So they said, we don't have an answer for you. Jesus says, well, then I'm not going to give you an answer. And the reason I'm not going to give you an answer is it's obvious you're trying to trap me. In the different writings that we have of Jesus' life, he was asked 183 questions, so almost 200 questions. Of those questions, he only gave direct answers 3 times. Other times he gave stories that kind of seemed to go off on a tangent. Often he would respond to questions with a question. In fact, you want to know how many questions Jesus himself asked? 307 questions. He asked questions all the time. Why? Because he was trying to build relationships. So here's the challenge for you, and here's the challenge for me. Let's work to be known as someone who is for people, that we want the best for them, that we sacrifice for them, that we hope to see them succeed, that we encourage them, we stand alongside them. Now, do you even think it's possible? Do you think it's possible for you to be someone who's known for being for people? More importantly, do you even want that? Do you want to be someone who is for people? Because if enough of us do it, we're going to be a church that's known as being for our community. Let me leave you with this. I think with the current climate and with the elections upon us, it is almost impossible to not get worked up about politics at some level or different things that affect our life in a significant way. But if you are for people, here's what I want you to remember. Jesus did not come to take sides. He came to take over. All right, Jesus came to introduce the kingdom of heaven to earth, which means he came to take whatever you imagine heaven to be like, a place of peace, a place of love, a place of grace, He came to bring that to earth. He came to introduce new values. He came to introduce a kingdom where wealth and those with wealth and power leverage their wealth and power for those without it. It's a kingdom where the king lays down his life for his subjects. It's a kingdom that's so broad and so inclusive that he said everybody's invited to participate. It's a kingdom that stands in opposition to every other kingdom. So there's 168 hours every single week. If we are going to be for our community, we need to think about how we're going to leverage our time and our resources in the 167 hours that we're not sitting in a building or watching online. If the majority of us can get committed to this, we're going to be known as a church for the community. We are for what God is for. So we're for hope, and we're for healing, and we're for life transformation, and we're for our neighbors, and we're for justice, and we're for generosity, and we're for unity. So next week, my good friend, Pastor Lawrence Kirby, is going to be in the house. And he's going to talk about what it looks like to be a church for unity and for racial reconciliation. Guys, if we're for people, we ought to desire this and want this. We don't want to come with our hearts guarded. We just want to come and say, I want to listen and I want to learn. I want to listen and I want to learn. If you're white, you want to listen, you want to learn. If you're black, you're brown, you're a person of color, you want to listen, you want to learn. And we're going to say, let's keep making a difference and moving forward. We are for our communities. Let me pray. Heavenly Father, give us the wisdom to know what to do with what we just heard. Give us the wisdom on how to respond to each week of this series and the courage to do it. In Jesus' name, amen.
I spoke a word, you were singing over me. And you've been so, so good to me. Before I took a breath, you breathed your life in me. You've been so, so kind. Reckless love of God. Oh. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, and lie you won't tear down, coming after me. No, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99, and I couldn't earn it, and I don't deserve it. Still, you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. And oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. And I couldn't turn it, and I don't deserve it. Still, you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Thank you.